Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. I'm David Harris, class of 2017. Thank you for joining us for the May edition of NextGen Presents. Over the past year, graduates have told us they want more professional development, more mentorship, more practical career insights from fellow Falcons. This series is built in direct response. Tonight, we'll be focusing on careers in real estate, a field that blends strategy, negotiation, entrepreneurship, and the opportunity to help people make some of the biggest decisions of their lives. You hear from graduates working across residential, commercial, and lending, sharing how they got started, what they've learned, and where they see opportunity ahead. All right, without further delay, we'll go ahead and kick things off. And as always, go Falcons, beat the Goats, and beat the Mules. Over to you, Todd.
Well, thank you, David. Appreciate it. Good, wonderful to be with you all tonight. And we are really excited to talk to you about grads who are interested in moving into the real estate industry. And I'm excited because what we're not going to talk about tonight, we're not going to talk about what you see on HGTV. We're not going to talk about market headlines or anything like that. But what we're going to talk about is a real practical conversation about how graduates can actually build careers in real estate. A little bit about what the early years look like, what success actually requires, and also how this industry actually is changing and evolving over time. So if you're curious about real estate, maybe as a full-time career, or maybe post-retirement, or even as possible as kind of a side job or a side gig, we're going to talk about all of that. Before we jump into our panel itself, a little bit about me. My name is Todd Strasser. I'm a 1998 graduate, 98 dominates. And after serving for about 10 years, I moved back to my hometown of Colorado Springs, which is where I grew up. And I've always enjoyed real estate, got back into diving into real estate a little bit, and actually started in the property management world, and then kind of moved on from there. I owned my own brokerage for 8 years, and today I'm involved in a lot of things: residential luxury, commercial brokering, actually do some business brokering and land development too. So pretty wide aperture of that. But one of my favorite things to do is to work with grads, and I've had the opportunity to do that in all of those segments of real estate. So, but we have a great panel tonight. I'm really excited to have all the panel members here, these grads. So I'm just going to ask each panel member to take a minute to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Dr. Tony Kelly.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited for this particular panel. Whenever I get to discuss real estate, needless to say, it's especially talking real estate with other grads and soon-to-be grads, this is actually a phenomenal opportunity. So a little bit about me. So I've been in real estate this is my 23rd, almost 24 years now. And I think like a lot of people who end up in real estate, it's not necessarily a linear progression. You don't necessarily go from the Air Force and then all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going to be a realtor. Some people do. I didn't do that. So I actually started off as a realtor. I started off, needless to say, when I was in the Air Force, I was a nuclear launch officer. Then what I did is when I got out, I went into corporate America and I worked in high tech, and then eventually found my way to real estate. So again, not a linear transition, but been in real estate for quite a while now. And this is my I think I'm celebrating I think it's our 22nd anniversary that's coming up here. So I co-founded a Keller Williams franchise, or Market Center, 22 years ago. So I still own that with my partners.
Thank you. All right, Lane Casper, are you on?
Hey, thanks, Todd. Yeah, Lane Casper, True Blue 92. I was a weather officer for my time on active duty. And then once I got out, I got into mergers and acquisitions. And after several years in that field, I was drawn into commercial real estate with a group of friends and colleagues that have helped me learn that business, and has really benefited my practice and the route that I've chosen. It's been a learning experience from day one, but it's been really a lot of fun as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Siobhan?
Hi, Hi, everyone. I'm Siobhan Celesta. I graduated in 2002, no limits. Um, I've been in real estate for almost 10 years now. I was, I was a pilot. I was flying C-130s, and then I was stationed up here. I got the opportunity to teach powered flight at the academy, which was one of the best assignments ever. I'm from here. I grew up here, so that was really nice. Um, I was medically retired after a car accident after about 16 years, and decided to enter the real estate world. So yeah, that's what I've been doing full time now. Also, I'm basically just residential real estate, focusing on grads in the military community here and veterans here in Colorado. Um, I'm also currently in my I just finished my second year of law school, trying to focus on real estate law and just become a stronger advocate for my clients. And yeah, I'll be honest with you tonight. I'm not going to give you the highlight real version of this career. I'll definitely tell you what it actually looks like. And I hope that's useful. Thanks.
It looks like we might have lost Todd. So for those of you who are joining us online, my name is Navir Walkowitz, class of 99. I work at the Association Foundation. And while we wait for Todd to get back on, we can get started with this amazing panel. We're so glad they're here. And while I am not the resident expert in this lane, I certainly can help start the conversation off here. So I think what would be really a great place for us to start is, what really drew you all to real estate? Was it deliberate, or was it something that you kind of fell into? So I think who would like to start with that, and then we can go from there. I feel like Siobhan, you're ready to start. You're muted, Siobhan.
Sure. I'll start. So what initially drew me to real estate? Honestly, it wasn't a deliberate choice. I went through kind of an identity crisis when I left the military. The only job I'd ever had was flying airplanes. So I figured I have no transferable skills to anything in the civilian life. And I generally didn't know what I could do. So I was actually, because I was in a car accident, I was visiting with a pain management doctor who asked what my plan was. And after I told him I didn't really have one, he suggested real estate. He said it'd be a really good fit because I'm from Colorado Springs. I grew up here. I know the city, and I can certainly sell every part of it because I love this place. So I sat down with my own realtor and asked her to give me the raw truth about the business. She did not hold back. She ultimately did push me over the edge to pursue this, and a lot of it was that I really wanted to work for myself and own my own business and be in control of that. So thanks.
Well, that's great, Siobhan. I had a similar path. It was something that I had been in a close business, that merger and acquisitions, representing business owners and selling their companies, and we would sell their real estate when it was part of the business. But if someone just wanted to sell a building or some land, I would just refer that off to the specialist. And so after a while, I decided to go ahead and get my license and be able to handle those transactions as well. But the idea of being an entrepreneur and being in control of my own destiny was really appealing to me. And that's what I think a lot of people are drawn to the real estate profession for that. If you're a self-starter and if you have the drive to handle the things that you need to take care of, real estate is a really good area to move into.
That's excellent. Yeah, and I think I alluded to this earlier, that this wasn't my first career after I got out of the Air Force. So I was in high tech in corporate America, and I was managing I managed lots of different teams. So I was strategic sales. I managed teams all over the country. I managed sales operations, managed a marketing organization. So this is back in the 90s. So at one point I was literally managing teams on 3 different continents. So that meant actually getting on a plane, because this is pre-Zoom. The internet was in its infancy and things like that. So you literally had to get on a plane. So I was doing about 65% travel, and I had 2 young kids at home at that time. And just eventually I call it my early midlife crisis. I was director of worldwide sales operations and absolutely miserable. Did not want to get on another plane to go visit another team. And during that process, when I was in corporate America, we lived in Minneapolis, we lived in San Francisco, we lived in San Diego. And each of those steps, we bought and sold homes. So I had these amazing experiences with realtors, and I also had some not so amazing experiences with realtors. So I was very familiar with the real estate process, and I was attracted to it from that perspective. But also, just to be perfectly frank, coming from the high-tech world, managing marketing organizations and sales organizations, in knowing a little bit about real estate, this is 2003. I literally just thought, like, hey, this is an industry I can get into and hit the ground running and really leverage my other skill sets so that I can be successful very quickly. And that worked out really well. I mean, my first year in real estate, I finished number 3 in my office. And it was literally just a matter of, now, put it in perspective, this is back in a time where like half the office, half the realtors literally prided themselves in the fact that they didn't use email. They're like, oh no, I believe in the personal touch. I'm just going to call them on the phone. I'm like, well, you do that and your clients will be emailing me. So that was one of the reasons I decided to go into real estate.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, as grads can consider moving into real estate, or they're thinking about a career in real estate, I was going to ask you, Siobhan, with your move, your transition into real estate, what are some of the things that grads should think about? We know that there's a lot. They're probably thinking about, well, there's a license involved. Do I need mentorship? Is really important that I join the right team? Is networking important? What would you say is, if a grad, where we all were, and then transitioning into this industry, what would you say is important right out of the gate?
Sure. I think Lane kind of touched on this a little bit too, but it's one thing to be a self-starter and another to have the discipline to get up every day and have a schedule, have time blocked for certain activities. Nobody's telling you where to be and when to be there, unless you're on a team. Of course, that can be pretty structured. I didn't start off on a team though. I started off by myself, which with a mentor, and I think that was just the best thing I could have done. I interviewed a whole bunch of brokerages, which was a different, kind of something different. You're not usually interviewing your boss, but in this industry, that is the case, because you're hanging your license under someone who you trust and who you trust to mentor you and to teach you. So I met with several. The one I chose was the employing broker was a great teacher. She had a structured program for new agents. A lot of times they'll hire you on with all these great intentions and messages, but then they'll just kind of toss you to the wolves. Figure it out. Come back to me with questions. You don't even know what questions you have at that point. So I would highly recommend you find somebody who's interested in investing time in you. So yeah, I still talk to her to this day. She's wonderful. So yeah, those the networking piece, of course, you're really trying to tap into a niche. I think that's important too. Kind of find the group of people that you think you're going to relate to best. I feel like the people who focus early on that are the most successful. My network when I started was almost entirely military and USAPA grads and people who retired here in Colorado Springs. That was very fortunate that I could that I was able to tap into that group and gain their trust. Yeah, and asking for business is really hard. I'm pretty introverted, and promoting myself doesn't come naturally. Throwing myself on social media was not natural at all. So, I'd say just consider that you're going to be out of your comfort zone quite a bit, no matter how experienced and how successful you were in the military. It's going to be a learning curve, and you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be rejected, and that part's probably the worst. I thought nobody warns you how personal it feels when somebody says no or chooses a different agent, or when a deal falls apart, or they walk off, after 9 months of you working with them. I'm still not immune to it after almost 10 years. It's probably the worst part, but it helps you grow and be better at building relationships.
Oh, very good. Yeah, that's so important. All those aspects. Dr. Kelly, I wanted to ask you a question because you're in a leadership role, not only doing real estate, but now been in a leadership role in real estate for many years. I think, when people from the outside look at this industry, they think a few things. It's like, well, it looks fun, it looks pretty easy, it looks very flexible, it looks like easy money, and these are some of the misnomers, but the reality is that we know there's actually a very high percentage, even as high as 87% of real estate brokers actually quit in the first 5 years. So that's pretty significant. So could you talk about a little bit about that? What does it take to survive and even thrive in this industry compared to maybe some other industries?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that 87% in the first 5 years, I would say, depending on what market you're in, like in our market here in the Pacific Northwest, it's probably closer to 87% dropout in the first 2.5 to 3 years. And it is what people don't see. And so one of the unique aspects that I have is that I actually, when people think about real estate, they think about what they see on HGTV or something like that. So I had the unique opportunity. I've shot 7 shows for HGTV. 4 of those were House Hunters. So you probably heard of that show.
Oh, yeah.
So I know how fake it is. I mean, it is like there's no connection to reality that's really taking place. So I caution people all the time. Don't look at all these real estate shows. I don't look at real estate shows at all. And partly is because I don't need to come home and watch like my profession on TV to relax. That's not relaxing for me at all. But especially because it's just so unrealistic. That is not real estate. So to answer your question, I would say, one, it takes a lot of resilience. Siobhan really touched on it, and she made a really good point. It's really hard to be told no. And it's even harder when you're starting off and you're thinking, hey, I got to tap into my current network, the people that I have. And a lot of times that's going to be friends or family. Well, guess what? Your friends and family know you don't know what you're doing. So they're usually the first people to tell you no. And so that's really the hard one to digest, is when people tell you no. But I would say what it really takes is it takes commitment, it takes resilience, it takes a lot of discipline. And if you can make it through that hump and understand that you're not going to have immediate success as soon as you start off, don't measure yourself based on what you see on TV or what you see in social media. When you see other realtors bragging about like, oh, I just sold this home or that home, and they're driving the fancy cars. A lot of that is not reality either. So you learn that very quickly once you've been in this industry for a while. Just don't compare yourself to that. But if you can make it through those first, like say 2 to 3 years, and you stick to it, then all of a sudden your success factor goes up exponentially. And that's what I found. And I can see the numbers as president of Oregon Realtors and our almost 20,000 realtors here. I see that curve of success based on how long they stick it out and stay in the industry.
Wow, very good. So you kind of have to be resilient, stay there, and then you'll start to see some of that success. Very good, Lane. One of the other things that I think people think about with real estate is often they get a little bit of pigeonholed in thinking, well, it's just residential real estate. You're in the commercial world that you mentioned. You actually used to do mergers and acquisitions and some other things too. So could you talk a little bit about the breadth of this industry? It's not just residential real estate, but what are some other areas that maybe grads could think about if they're interested in real estate that they could go into?
Absolutely. That's where on the commercial side, I think the opportunities to focus on a certain area are very wide and variety. There's whether you're talking about industrial or commercial or retail, um, y- multifamily, land, ranch properties. There's so many different areas that kind of fall under that commercial umbrella. And it's not necessarily important to just focus on one of those, but if you do get involved in some of those types of transactions, you'll find that the others kind of follow along. In fact, whether it's buying or selling or representing landlords or tenants in those different areas, it's there's so many different ways. Then you go out to just investment properties, people involved in real estate through investment, or you have mortgage lenders or title companies or all the other services that are involved in and around the real estate industry. There are a lot of ways to get involved in real estate as not just being a sales agent or a broker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think of all the other dimensions too, really, of this industry. I mean, the whole, mortgage and lending is really tied to real estate. There's title companies, there's appraisers, there's asset management, there's property management. There's all kinds of different factors, and I found the same thing like you, that there's different dimensions that could be that you could dive into as a grad. So I think we just probably all want to collectively say that we might you might see the HGTV and think that's what real estate is, but it's this really wide, broad industry as well. Well, I just wanted to kind of open it up to anybody for this, but one of the things that surprised me, that I didn't realize jumping into real estate, is how much it is also just a running of your own business. It's not a W-2 job. I think one of the real estate coaches has said you wake up every day unemployed and you need to go get business. So that's what was kind of surprising to me to move into. But for the other panelists, what do you think? What surprised you that maybe would help our grads just level set expectations a little bit for them if they choose a career in real estate?
Yeah, the financial aspect, I think, is something that many people that get into real estate don't understand or don't expect, that they're going to have some finances available to sustain themselves while they're building up their business. Even just getting a listing requires some investment in buying signage or buying the software that you need to market a property, or even the insurance that you're required to carry. There's a cost to that, along with the fees for getting a license, and that's all before you've closed your first deal. And that can take a long time. Residential is a little bit faster pace. Commercial deals take a lot longer time from start to finish. So having some resources available, whether that's your own personal resources or those from the team and the brokerage that you get involved with, is really important to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Lane said, that's an excellent point that a lot of people don't take into account when they get into this profession. What we see is whenever the market is good, then we'll see the numbers of realtors, number of people getting into real estate go up, because at the end of the day, the barriers to entry to this profession are kind of low. So when everybody's, hey, this isn't a way to make easy money, they jump into it. And then all of a sudden they realize, oh, I haven't closed a deal in 2 years, but yet I have all my association fees, my realtor fees, I have these office fees. And like Lane said, if you, in the residential side, if you get a listing, now you've got these marketing expenses as well. You got your photography and your video and your preferred placement on the different platforms. All this stuff costs money. And that one of the reasons, Todd, it goes back to why people get out after the first 3 years or 5 years. It's because they just run out of money. And so you have to come into it. I tell people, put together a business plan. This is what I did. And it was 23 years ago. But when I did this, I literally sat down and I put together a business plan. I put together what my estimated expenses would be. And I ran that out for 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, 48 months. So I had a general idea. Now, of course, that shifted once you get into it and you're actually starting to produce, or you're starting to market, or you're starting to pick up clients. But I knew I had to have some type of money I was investing in this, because you're a small business owner. Like any other small business, you got to have some startup capital. So if you don't, you're going to be out of this industry very quickly.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that too. It's so important. I think what was recommended to me was that I have 3 months of expenses saved up before I dove into this. And yeah, I think at a minimum in a hot market, that's probably safe because it does take that long to get a paycheck. You're not seeing one on the 1st and the 15th anymore. So that was a reality check. I think and the listing expenses itself, I just spent $1,500 on photos and videos to market a home. So yeah, and it probably won't close for 3 months. I'm hoping it closes in 3 months, actually. So yeah, maybe I'll get paid eventually. So and another thing, finances. Those are great points. Another thing that surprised me was the emotional side of this job. It is relentless. So you are managing people through some of the most stressful moments of their lives: divorce, death, relocation, finances. So you become part therapist, part negotiator, part project manager. Nobody tells you that going in, that you probably will get phone calls I have recently at 2 o'clock in the morning, because people are just freaking out. So yeah, that's a big piece of it. Obviously, you have to draw boundaries. You do not answer the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. But you'll get the texts at 9 p.m., 9:30, 10 o'clock on a Friday night. It's hard not to be available because you want the business, but you also have to. If once you set that precedent that you are available, it does not stop. So do your family a favor, do your own emotional self a favor, and don't do that. And again, the rejection piece is just something else I wasn't ready for. You can't really prepare yourself for that. Although I did hear a TED talk about a guy who he feared rejection so much that he actually went out and tried to be rejected like 50 times over the week, just with ridiculous requests, just so he could feel the no and really know what that feels like. And it did help. So if you're thinking about an exercise like that, give me a call. I'll help you.
50 times, that's easy to do.
I know.
I was going to say, that's pretty easy.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, is just that you are that counselor in many ways too. I mean, it's just a huge transaction. And I know a lot of times people say, oh, real estate is like the biggest maybe asset transaction they'll make. That's true. But a home is more than that. It's where you raise children. It becomes a lot more emotional, like you're saying sometimes. And in commercial deals, many times, like maybe Lane and I have done, they're not that, but in many ways it's these people's investments, for future generations. And so it can be very significant, or you have entrepreneurs that you're working with. But yeah, it's really interesting. The surprise that I had was, I think, particularly all of us being, pretty steady salaries in the military and then shifting to this, is that the point of sale, which, for business people, is very extended. So, like Tony was saying, you spend all this money and your point of sale might not ever happen, particularly in like commercial, like Lane knows, like you do all this work and it might fail. The deal might not even go through. And that's difficult versus other jobs where at least you sell something and you get some income. So you have to be prepared for that.
That's where I think our backgrounds at the academy and the integrity that we were drilled into and that we learned and cultivated, it really comes into play. Being an advisor, a fiduciary advisor for our clients, there are times when I need to give them advice that is not going to benefit me. And that is something that I fall back on the honor code and everything that we held dear at the academy. So for a service academy grad, I think that helps you in that arena. But it also doesn't make it any easier when you're in that for your profession.
Yeah, Elaine, I would like that is such an excellent point as far as that foundation that we were able to get at the Air Force Academy and that ethical piece, because what you'll find is you do all this work, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, you're really close to closing, and then all of a sudden things start to fall apart, right? Or you're doing the home inspection and the home is like, your client should not buy this home, right? But yet I see on the other side agents who are very tempted. You can tell, like, I haven't had a paycheck in 6 months. I just got to get this thing closed. And they start veering towards unethical behavior that's not in the best interest of their clients, right? You see this all the time. And I see it as, again, in my leadership roles in the governance space, because I'm on those hearing panels for this, this ethical behavior. And it's usually tied to the financial aspect and the desperation that agents have when it comes down to, closing that deal and not looking out for the best interests of their clients. And that's just something I've never been tempted by. And I don't think any grad, we're just not tempted by that. We're like, yeah, you know what, client, we got to pass on this. This is not the home for you. Or, hey, no, you can't, not disclose that you have mold in the attic. You have to do that. Yes, it may kill the deal, but this is what we have to do. That's something that's just natural for us. And I can tell you it's not necessarily natural for a lot of people.
No, I agree with Dr. Kelly. It's absolutely not. It's not necessarily the reputation that our industry has, which hurts sometimes. You kind of go from a career where you're deeply respected. Your rank, your experience, your judgment, it all means something, and then you come to an industry where people may not have that respect for realtors because of the precedent others have set. They can ghost you after months of work and be rude and move on without a second thought. It's just that was a culture shock. Unfortunately, you really do have to prove that you have that integrity, and hopefully people gather that based on your background. But you don't always get to that point with people, so you do have to kind of overwork for that trust.
Yeah, that trust, that's so important. And I think that integrity is exactly what you're talking about. One of my desires in this industry is always to bolster the industry, to raise the level of professionalism in the industry, so that we can provide all of our clients, our customers, with the highest level of service. And part of that, I think everybody probably has a sense that real estate is a relationship business. Most people choose brokers based on people they know, like, and trust, not necessarily, somebody that they found just like on a flyer somewhere on the side of a bus or something. But how have you instilled that? How have you built trust, credibility into your business?
Yeah. So I would say real estate is 100% a matter of relationships. I mean, those agents who are consistently successful. Now, that being said, in this industry, and this is one of the things that I've seen change since I got into this 23 years ago, is it used to be purely about making these actual connections with people, versus today you have these, you can buy leads, or you can be part of these different platforms where they'll supply leads to you or prospects to you. And what I find is a lot of agents who do a lot of volume or a lot of transactions, they don't necessarily establish those relationships and keep those relationships. So what happens is they don't get that repeat business from their clients. So if I can give anybody any advice, I'm not going to tell you not to use those platforms. Absolutely use those, that's for sure. But when you get that client, you have a successful transaction, a successful closing. My philosophy, and I tell my clients this when they hire me, it's like, I'm going to be your realtor for life. Like, I want to be selling your kids' homes and your grandkids' homes. So if you have a question about, the deal closed 5 years ago, and it's like, hey, I was wondering, do you have a roof cleaner or that you can recommend? Or, hey, do you have a copy of that inspection report? Or who should I call about getting water out of my crawl space? I'm in Oregon, so that's an issue here. So, but they can call me way after the transaction. And so I've been, when I got into the business, my philosophy was I wanted to provide Nordstrom level service, like just above and beyond what they're expecting. So at the end of that transaction, they're telling all their friends, they're telling their families, they're telling their colleagues, it's like, I've got a realtor. This is the person who's going to take care of you, and they're going to be your realtor for life. So, and that's just purely based on managing that relationship and establishing that expectation up front that I'm here for you when you need me.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's critical. Yeah, I think about you being that advisor, that like trusted advisor for years going past you. Again, it's a bit different than other industries, where as a broker, you establish a relationship that continues on for years. It's not sort of just like a one-time point of sale. I want to talk, time is moving on. So I want to talk about one thing as we kind of dive deep a little bit for a minute here for people that are really considering this, but real estate's always changing. I think it's an industry that's always fluxing, whether you're in, commercial, residential, the mortgage world. Technology has changed a lot. I'd like to ask everybody in the panel here, just what changes are you seeing now? And then what could a grad that's going into real estate, what kind of changes should they expect in this industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
Sure, I'd like to speak to that. Just yeah, we've seen a lot of changes. They're happening quickly, especially with AI. I think if you're not embracing that and what it can do for your business, then you're going to get left behind pretty fast. We use it for all kinds of things: social media, SEO, listing descriptions, even how I communicate with different generations of buyers. I'm working with a 22 grad right now, and I can tell that he's using AI to get information about this process. And it's really interesting, because I asked him yesterday how he wanted to take title, and he's like, "Oh, I have some notes on that, hold on." And it was great. He came back at me with exactly what I was hoping he would say, because that's his situation would adhere to that. So you want to explain this process and be an advisor, but it's also important to open up and let people tell you what they know, what they've learned from this. Because I'll say it plainly, Zillow, I think, is actively trying to phase us out. They want to own the transaction. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's that's just their business model. And we want to encourage that. We want to encourage buyers to do as much research through AI as they can. But in the end, build a genuine relationship with a human being and have someone that's going to be able to advocate fiercely for you and navigate the emotional complexity that we talked about of the transaction. So yeah, that AI would just be a big part of this.
Great point.
Yeah, I think that adds to the fact that our customers, our clients, are much more educated and much more savvy because they have access to so much more information than they had in the past, and so it's up to us to add to that value, bringing in our expertise and being able to help analyze all the information that they are finding online about properties, which, it's one thing to have the information or the data, but it's another thing to have the experience to be able to analyze the data and make recommendations. So knowing that my clients have already been all over LoopNet and have found everything about the investment property that they're looking at, then I can help them, showing them what kind of analysis they need to be doing in order to make good decisions.
Yeah, Lane, actually, you stole my thunder there. And that is, and actually, Siobhan did as well. AI is definitely one of the biggest technological jumps that we've seen, that I've experienced in two decades. But at the same time, like what Lane was saying, we have to be there to use our expertise to help them analyze the data that they're coming across in AI. And prime example, I mean, I just had a transaction, I think it was just a couple of days ago, where I could tell that the buyer is using AI to do a pricing analysis to determine what type of price they want to, what type of offer they want to make for this property. And it's clearly AI because it's all over the place. It's just not accurate. Now, I'm not saying AI is inaccurate, but I say a lot of times AI is not accurate when it comes down because it doesn't have the context about neighborhoods and features or schools or anything like that we have. That's what we do as professionals. So don't let technology replace you, because you will be replaced if you let it replace you. Be a student of the industry, be a student of our profession, always stay on top of what's happening in our profession and our industry. And you'll always, because AI is not going to replace the relationship piece at the end of the day. So if you're doing your job well and you're establishing that relationship, you don't have to worry about AI replacing you, but you certainly want to use AI to leverage your skill set and supplement and help you on the agentic side of the transaction itself. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we're seeing AI. Some people will say AI is going to replace realtors completely. What I think needs to happen, though, if you do go into this industry, is use it to save time. That's pretty critical because the leaders in this industry are going to use AI to save themselves time, and also to kind of bolster and enhance, like what Siobhan was saying, like bolster what you can provide. For your clients. So that's real important. Well, I do want to throw a question out there, and then we're going to go to some questions from our watching live audience. And we might get different answers on this, so it'll be interesting to see what you all think. But one of the other things when people think about realtors or real estate, because they've probably known someone that has done this, is to see it as a part-time sort of a job. It's like, maybe I have a business, or I have my primary role and I can do real estate on the side. And I'd just like to hear from our panel what you think about that. Would you recommend that to a grad? Would you not? What are your thoughts? Siobhan, any
Sure.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I may give a different answer than you might expect. I actually think real estate needs to be a full-time commitment, especially if you're representing clients. If you're investing in your own properties, that's a different conversation. But if you're representing buyers and sellers, I think anything less than full commitment is honestly a disservice. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years and I'm still learning something new in every transaction. The contract is constantly changing. And that's where I see the biggest issues with agents, with greener agents who don't have the experience. I see their contracts come through and they are really putting their buyers at a disadvantage, and maybe even into legal trouble. It's a big deal. You don't want to be in a legal situation because you only do one transaction every few months. You really have. I mean, if of course, if you're new and you're doing this full time, that may be what you get is one transaction every few months, but you're still immersed in the community and you're immersed in the industry. So you're learning from other people. I love that too. Talking to other realtors constantly, seeing the mistakes that they made. Those conversations are invaluable. So I just really can't imagine being a truly effective advocate for someone making the biggest financial decision of their lives while doing having a full-time job somewhere else. That's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah. What do you think, Dr. Kelly? Because you're leading a lot of realtors, like you said, in the state. What do you see? You must see a lot of that dimension to the industry.
I do, and I could not agree with Siobhan more. So, because that was going to be my take. I've seen it from multiple perspectives. So for about 20 years, I managed a pretty large team. I had between 10 and 15 agents on my team and full-time staff as well. And I can tell you unequivocally, the agents who dove in full-time were the ones who had a better shot of being successful. I've never had a part-time agent who joined my team. In fact, after the first couple of years, I just stopped hiring part-time agents, but I've never had a part-time agent be successful in this. This is a profession. You have to be a professional. You can't be a part-time doctor or a part-time lawyer. Nobody's going to hire a part-time lawyer. Why should they hire a part-time realtor? No, you need to be a professional in this industry. And that means 100%, 110% of your dedication and your focus needs to go towards your profession. So that's my opinion. It may be different in commercial, so I'll throw it over to Lane.
Yeah.
No, the people that I know who've been part-time in real estate, they're already independently wealthy, and they're just doing transactions for friends and family who trust them. But they're not the ones out there that are actually looking for new business or making a sustainable business, because you have to be available for your clients. And you also have to put in the work to develop that network to get the next client. Great. You just closed on a deal. Okay. Congratulations. Celebrate. When's the next one? Okay. If you haven't been planning ahead for that, then it's going to be a long time before you're able to see the fruits of your work.
And I wholeheartedly agree with all of you. I would agree with the same. You know, it's interesting. This industry, I just say to grads out there that are considering this, we don't go to 4 years of medical school. You know, we don't get our law degree. A lot of this is on the job repetition through transaction after transaction after transaction. And so, like Siobhan is saying, if you're part-time, you're just going to do less transactions. But brokers become better after many, many, many transactions. And so, the full-time allows that. And I would just say really, really catapults your ability to be successful, as we're saying. So I just want to throw that out there for our grads, because I know a lot of people think, oh, maybe I could do this on the side, but I just wanted everybody to hear that. We are getting a couple questions from the live audience, so I appreciate that. Now, one of the questions is, does anyone here have experience in the mortgage loan origination space? Now, we don't have anyone here that's in that space, but would anyone like to speak to that a little bit, to that grad, maybe thinking about going into the mortgage or loan industry? Any thoughts to share in that space?
Sure, I can share real quick.
Great.
My husband was in that space for a while, and I don't think it's that different from where we are. You're still selling yourselves to clients. You're proving that you're trustworthy, that you're knowledgeable, that you can adapt and shift with the market. You're keeping on top of all of the craziness of interest rates, and maybe studying enough to have updates every day. I mean, it really is. I also think that needs to be a full-time job. I would be cautious about a part-time lender, but I've seen them, and it's lots of things can go wrong. As a realtor, I really need to trust you. I really need you to know what you're doing. A lender can completely sabotage a deal, and a lender can make a deal absolutely fantastic. So I would just say that it's very similar. You're using your network, your skills, your fiduciary duties. It's just as important. And we come up with great teams. A lender realtor relationship is crucial. And I'm sure all of you have somebody that you trust with your kids. They're just great people.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. When you say trust with your kids, my lending partner I've been with for a very long time, and they did the deals for both of my kids when they purchased their homes. So,
yeah, that's really, yeah. In fact, so to this grad, I would say it's a great segment of the industry to go into. In fact, there are tons of grads that are in that space, so that you can certainly, although we might not have any on this panel, there's certainly, and it's an important area too, because I will just say this, I know it definitely in the commercial world and in the residential as well, but often the lender is the first stop for our clients. Like, we're not going to go show homes or even get into business brokerage discussions unless it's like, well, how's your financing? Is that set up first? So a lot of times they're at the very front of this discussion, and then we can move into, what's viable, what can you afford, what's possible. So very important partnership, like Siobhan said, and we really appreciate, I think, all of our lender brethren out there. So very important. One other comment from Roger Hill, 70 grad. Appreciate that. He said, great presentation as a licensed realtor in Castle Rock. Suggest a few comments about creating wealth for your family by owning rental properties. And absolutely, the thing about real estate is it's not just sort of a one-off a commodity or something like that, or maybe a service that you conduct, but obviously it can be kind of a wealth building strategy for families too. And I know a lot of people in real estate sometimes will go that route, and because they're familiar with real estate, will invest in rental properties or other types of business real estate aspects. Anybody here on the panel been involved in that or had experience with building wealth that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with a lot of clients who buy investment properties, and again, it goes back to creating that generational wealth. My wife and I have an investment property as well. But the one thing I really want to emphasize with that, when it comes down to that wealth building, is that at the end of the day, real estate is the number one way in our country for people to truly build generational wealth. It's not even close. This is the way that you can build generational wealth. So one of the most rewarding aspects of this profession is actually helping people take that step and participating in the American dream of home ownership and building generational wealth. This industry has been phenomenal to me. I mean, it put my kids through college. It allowed me to send my kids to college without burdening them with all this student loan debt, which allowed them to eventually buy homes, and because they didn't have that student loan debt. So it allowed them to be on that right path. And this is something that real estate did for me. So I know in this presentation, we've talked about some of the negative aspects of real estate, but there are some amazing, amazing aspects in this industry. And I wouldn't be in any other industry, which is why I've been here for so long. I just get so much joy out of helping people participate in the American dream of home ownership.
I'd caution people to jump into that, just because there is a lot more than what you see on flipping shows and investment property. There's so many costs. There's so many pitfalls to avoid. So not going into it blindly or thinking that it's a get rich quick scheme. There's a lot to consider about owning investment properties, the property management, the taxes, all of the other expenses that go into maintaining a home. Do your homework and be sure that you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, whatever networks, the house flipping is a very fun, attractive thing on TV. But the reality is, I know way, way, way more people that have just not done nothing but lost money on flipping homes than made money. I mean, you have to be extremely savvy to do that. It's not for the novice. There's definitely something to be had there. But I totally agree with you, Lane. You have to be smart on that.
Yes, definitely, Lane. I think that if you're going to jump into that, whether it's long-term or short-term renting, do your homework. The laws, especially in Colorado, are changing constantly. It's become very tenant friendly in the last couple of years. You can't just remove a tenant anymore. You have to have cause to evict someone or not renew a lease. It's very complicated, and it's just a significant shift from what we've seen in the last 10 years. The habitability standards, those are super strict now. You might have to put your tenant up in a hotel for 60 days if the water heater isn't working properly. There's a lot of financial exposure. I just want people to understand, do your research, do your homework, especially on the laws. Short-term rental laws have been fluctuating like crazy here. We actually personally had a short-term rental in Woodland Park, Colorado, and just recently the city has decided that they don't want short-term rentals anymore. So what do you do when you have a home up there that is perfect for this niche, not necessarily the community for a $3,500 a month rental home, long-term rental. So it's not that we could have forecasted that, but it happens. So think about it, just be ready. And my honest advice, just do your homework.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Siobhan. We have the same situation here in Oregon, where the tenant laws have certainly changed in the last few years, and it is very, very tenant friendly, to the point where it's actually onerous for property or for homeowners or investment owners. Trying to get a tenant out of your property, no matter what they're doing to your property, it's a complicated and very long process here in the state of Oregon. So you got to be very cognizant of that. So I just want to put a caveat to my words. When I talk about like generational wealth building through real estate, I'm talking about owning a home, building that equity in the home, not necessarily flipping. So that's not my thing. And I would say, again, like Lane said, if you're getting into this from the investment perspective side, you got to know what you're doing. I'm just going to be frank with you. I've had so many clients over the years who see something on TV and are like, oh, or read something on the internet, or their friend's friend told them about this, and they start buying homes and they get leveraged to the hilt. And next thing you know, they lose all the homes. That's more common than it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great points. Well, I feel like we could talk all night about these different dynamics, but we're about out of time. So what I'd like to do is just hear just real quick from each of us before we close, just again, back to the grads out there that are considering going into the real estate industry. If they're starting today, what would be the one piece of advice you would give them? We can just kind of go around, start with Siobhan, and hear from each of us about that.
I think, a great thing to do would be to sit down with someone who's been doing this for a long time, someone who's made that transition and has the experience, maybe from active duty or another career field to this. Sit down and really understand what you're getting into. And then find a place that's gonna mentor you. That you may be paying half of your commission to this person or more every month, every transaction. But I guarantee you, if someone's taking that, they should also be giving and giving and giving and showing you how to do this and showing you how to make this a long-term career for you. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, I would agree with Siobhan. I would say interview a realtor who's been in the industry. I would say at least 5 to 10 years, somebody who's actually seen some fluctuations in the market itself, and talk to a realtor who's not trying to recruit you to join their team, because they're going to tell you the pie in the sky, all the unicorn stuff. Talk to somebody who has no relationship to or no vested interest in you going into the profession, and ask them about the pitfalls, the pros and the cons of the industry. I would say also put together a business plan. I talked about that earlier. You got to put together a business plan and figure out what type of financial investment you're willing to actually make into your small business. You're starting a small business, so you got to look at it from that perspective. And if you jump in, you got to be resilient. You got to have a thick skin. You've got to have a lot of discipline. And again, it goes back to some of those character traits that we develop at the Air Force Academy. That discipline piece, it really comes into play and separates us from a lot of other people who get into this industry.
Yeah, build up your network. The best way to get business is from people who know you and who like you. And so building that networking is an ongoing process of finding that sphere of influence that when they hear about a client who's in need of a realtor for a specific need, they're going to think of you and they're going to send it your way. And that takes a lot of work to develop trust and develop those contacts, but it's invaluable. It's priceless in sustaining your business.
Yeah, excellent. And what I would just say, I'd say take a minute to assess your gifts and just what you enjoy doing. This is a people business. It's a relationship business. It's interacting and it's helping people, serving people in that way. So communication, we've talked about that, resiliency, very, very important. Trust, building that trust, and also keeping up with a market that's constantly changing. I mean, it is, as Siobhan said, that's how I start my day, is I look at the market every single day and I understand what's going on in the market. So it's a very active, very perishable sort of stats sort of industry. So if you like that kind of thing, it might be for you. So, well, thank you, panelists, so much. This has been great. It's been wonderful to talk to grads in the real estate industry. Thanks for joining us. And for everybody out there, I really hope that you've seen that there's not just one single path into real estate, and it's a very broad industry with a lot of breadth and dimension. So whether this field becomes your next career or opportunity or something that you just maybe understand better from tonight, we thank you for joining us, and we hope you continue to learn more and more from the Long Blue Line. So thanks for joining us tonight.